Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. You ready for another episode of my Bigfoot sighting? Alright then, let's do this.
Seen a bunch of run-down, no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves and the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.
One or more of tonight's guests are courtesy of the U.S. Bigfoot Patrol. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to report it to them, please call them at 865-383-0778.
My Bigfoot sighting occurred during the salmon run of 2019 in British Columbia on the Adams River. A friend and I had decided to go out to an out-of-the-way spot, as there's world-class fishing in British Columbia instead of where we normally fished. So we packed up his truck and we headed out into a more remote location. When we found a spot we thought we'd like, we got out of the truck, got on all our hip waders and got our gear and headed into the woods, which were at the beginning walkable but thick. And as we progressed through into the forest, it became very thick and quite hard to walk through. But fortunately, we came across a game trail and turned towards the river. I'm a bit of a city guy, so I was very nervous about bears and watching for bear scat or indications of bear, which there were none. And as we got closer to the river, I started noticing things that I had seen on the internet that involve Sasquatches. I am a big fan and always have been, such as tree structures, both big and very small, branches that were snapped at high height that made no sense, and actually a healthy tree that had been ripped right out of the ground and still had dirt in the root system. So I looked over to my buddy and I said, "Hey, there's no indications of bears, but from what I've seen on the internet, I think we're in Sasquatch country." And he laughed at me a little bit and said, "Well, let's hope it's a good one." And I dismissed it. I mean, he didn't seem concerned, so we went and started fishing in the Adams River. For about 2 hours, we hadn't had any action whatsoever. And then finally, just over the sound of the river, I heard my buddy's voice call my name. So I looked up thinking that he'd caught a fish. But when I looked over to him, he just threw his head over towards the opposite riverbank, which caused me a little bit of alarm because I thought at that point that maybe a bear had wandered down and I hadn't caught it. When I looked over, my jaw dropped, literally, as there was no bear, but a 7 to 8 foot Sasquatch standing no more than 50 feet from me, if that. I could have thrown a baseball to him if I wanted to. And he just stood there swaying from side to side slowly, almost mesmerized. It was mesmerizing the way he had swayed. And it felt as if it was looking through my soul. Standing in the middle of the river, I was a bit alarmed that I couldn't run, which was my first instinct. But I quickly thought that if it wanted me dead, he clearly would have killed me by now. So I decided to stand my ground and I prayed a little bit for my safety and I kept eye contact. And as he continued to sway, I went into my hip waders pocket hoping my camera was there, but of course I had left it on the riverbank in my backpack. This guy was amazing. He was, like I said, 78 feet tall. The muscle mass and the muscle definition was incredible. He had to have weighed at least 700 to 800 pounds. He was so huge, 4.5 to 5 feet across the shoulders. Not much of a neck. He had the cone head. Didn't look like an ape, but didn't quite look human. Jet black hair, which was weird because it was easy to see the muscle definition through him. Like, this guy had a six pack. It was so clear. His forearms were abnormally long from the elbow down. I think hence the reason why their feet go below their knees. His legs were massive. It's easy to see how they can pick up boulders and throw them great distances. He had an oddly perfect set of teeth in his mouth. You would think that an animal in the woods wouldn't have such a great set of teeth, but they were perfect. I mean, when I say perfect, perfectly aligned, like there were no missing teeth. There were no gaps. There was nothing. It was just a perfect mouth. As we kept eye contact, he didn't make a sound whatsoever. And it was almost as if he was trying to make me calm, because any sense of fear disappeared quickly. As I'm looking at the Sasquatch, though, something off to the right caught my attention. And when I turned to see what it was a smaller Sasquatch with much lighter hair, of course, much smaller in size, standing back about, 80 feet in the woods. The moment I broke eye contact with the original Sasquatch, the scariest, most blood-curdling growl came out of the Sasquatch, making me so afraid that I immediately looked right back at him in the eyes. And at which point he stepped down off an embankment about 5 feet down to the riverbank. And at that moment I thought, okay, now he's coming. So I was going to jump into I was going to lower into the river and allow the water to fill my hip waders, because I would have much rather drown than get ripped apart by a Sasquatch. But all he did was drop down to one knee, and with these two massive hands, scooped up some water, drank it with a loud slurp, and of course kept the eye contact with me. And when he went to grab a second drink of water, there was a loud shriek from behind him, and out of the corner of my eyes, because I wasn't breaking eye contact ever again, I saw a black blur running through the forest towards where the smaller juvenile Sasquatch was. And at that point, the alpha male, because when he stepped down, I clearly saw that it was a male. He stepped back up, and the whole time keeping eye contact, stepped back up the 5 feet embankment and started walking towards the juvenile. And at one point, 3 Sasquatch came together, as a family would. So clearly it was the Sasquatch family. And they started walking away. The Sasquatch kept eye contact until they started walking into the forest. And then he looked away for a few feet. And then he looked back once where I was still standing in the river. And then when he looked away, I decided it was time for me to get out of there very quickly. So I waded out of the river and called out to my buddy and told him to wade up. When I got to the riverbank on my side of the river, I turned to look, and all 3 Sasquatch were gone. It was as if they had just disappeared. Because they were walking straight, and there was a long ways for them to go, and I only had them out of my sight for maybe a minute. When I got up to my friend, I asked him if he had seen what I saw, and he looked at me and said that there was no way he was taking his eyes off the female Sasquatch that was standing on the shoreline across from him, because he was almost positive she was going to charge, because she was smacking the ground. She knocked over a tree, and she had him so scared it wasn't even funny. As we decided it was time to leave. We talked about if there was maybe some sort of, I don't know how to put it, like a contest or something for all the tourists that were in the area. There were these people who were dressed up in Sasquatch outfits, but of course there wasn't. And I mean, it was so surreal to have been so close to a creature that so many say doesn't exist. And there he was. It was absolutely one of the most breathtaking, at first scariest, but not for long after that, moments of my life. I mean, it almost became poetic looking into this creature's eyes and knowing that it didn't kill me, which to this day still makes me wonder why so many people say that they're so violent when this guy could have destroyed me in a heartbeat. That was my closest and undeniable experience with Sasquatch. And it has confirmed other incidences in my life where I thought maybe there might have been a Sasquatch in the area because of the tree knocks and the howling. And folks, Sasquatch is out there. People don't see them because they're just not in the right spot. Or maybe they're just not supposed to see them. I question that every day. And that's my Bigfoot sighting.
My Bigfoot sighting happened in Georgia in September of 2019. I had just picked my daughter up from school, and we were on our way back home, and I decided to go home through the back way, we call it. It's down a dirt road. And as you go down this dirt road, there's 2,000 acres on one side and 2,000 acres on the other side. It's all lease. It's hunting property that they use for timberland, but the hunters lease it out for deer season. So I turned down the dirt road and we're heading down. And it kind of winds around, and you go down into a valley and you cross over a creek. And as we're coming up a hill, there's a turn in the road, and the phone poles, instead of following the road, they just went ahead and cut them through the trees because the road kind of curves around, and then the phone poles pick back up on the road on the other side. And we're just driving, 25 miles an hour because it is a dirt road, and it's about 5 o'clock in the evening, blue skies, sunny Georgia, blue skies. And as we're making the turn by where the phone poles cut through the trees down there, they cut a swath probably about, I'm going to say 20 feet wide, so they can get in there and access those phone poles during hurricane season. If a tree happened to fall on the wires or something, they got easy access to get down in there. And as we're turning that corner, those phone poles kind of go down, and then they kind of meet the road up on the other side of the hill. So they're kind of like down in a valley. I see something move, and I just hit the brakes in my truck, and I said, "Lizzie, did you see that?" And of course, she's a teenager, and she's got her headphones on or something. So she just looked at me, and I said, "Did you see that?" And she said, "What?" And I backed up, and there was a Bigfoot, Sasquatch, or as we call him here, we call him the West Georgia Pine Apes. He was leaning on that pole. He was just stopped there, and it looked like he had a hand up on the pole, and he was just looking at us. And I turned to Lizzie, and I said, "Give me your phone." So I got her phone, reached out the window, and I snapped the picture. Now, this road kind of curves around. Like if Bigfoot was on a clock, Bigfoot would be right at the center of the clock. And we were sitting at 6 o'clock. And the road runs around maybe about a mile. and the clearing comes out at 12 o'clock. So I said, let's drive over there to see maybe we can get a better view of them, or maybe we can see them like around 3 o'clock or something like that. So we start moving around, and as we're starting to move a little bit, I see them start to move towards 3 o'clock. So we start going around, and we're trying to look through the trees and everything, and it's just thick pine trees back in there. And when we got around to 12 o'clock, we did not see anything. So I said, let's go back to 6 o'clock. So we turned around and we went back to 6 o'clock, and there was absolutely nothing there anymore. And this thing was, I would say it was probably, judging by the phone pole down there, he was probably at least 8 foot tall, just black hair, standing on 2 legs, kind of a muscular build. I mean, he would probably be a professional wrestler build, like from the WWE or something like that, if I had to describe the build of him. But you could just tell he was muscular. And I mean, when he took a stride, it was a pretty big stride. But the area that we saw him in, like I said, there's 2,000 acres on one side of the road and 2,000 acres on the other side. And once you get past all that hunting property, there's a 400-acre farm. I think the man has 200 acres on one side and 200 acres on the other side. And there's he always has beef cattle over there. And then our house is further up that way. So it's in a real squatchy area, as I like to say. And there's a creek on that road that we had to go over before we got up to the bend where the phone poles ran through the pine trees. And that creek, I've been in Georgia for 12 years, in this area for 12 years. And that creek has never ran dry. And that's pretty unusual, I think, for all the lack of rain that we get in the summertime. So that would be a good place for Bigfoot, Sasquatch, or West Georgia Pine Apes to hang out, because there's always a water source, and that place is always loaded with turkey. And like I said before, they lease that land out to hunters. So, there's deer back in there if they're back there paying money to go hunt on somebody else's property. But that was pretty much my Bigfoot sighting.
Well, that's it for tonight's show. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let us know. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves and the plow, and the 5-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.